All right, what am I doing today? I'm going to do some coding challenges. And I'm probably just going to do two. I'm probably going to do a warm-up challenge, and then I will probably follow that up with a more difficult challenge. But the warm-up challenge will be just a way to make sure that, my brain is primed and ready to do a slightly more complicated one. Who knows if I'll be able to finish it. So if you're watching this in the future, just beware. I have no idea whether or not I'm actually going to sit through the entire challenge because sometimes I run into one that takes a while to do. So I might have to finish it later, or who knows, maybe I'll finish it. Let's find out. So I'm going to start with an easy one just to kind of warm up. Well, I would say 8Q is about as easy as it gets, right? If you're unfamiliar with how this website works, it is just a coding challenge website, and the higher the KYU, the easier the problem is. Now, let's see. I'm just looking at the challenges. I'm going to find one that's interesting to me really quick. If you've completed this kata already and want a bigger challenge, here's the 3D version. Bob is bored during his physics lesson, so he built himself a toy box to help pass the time. The box is special because it has the ability to change gravity. There are some columns of toy cubes in the box. Given the initial configuration of the cubes in the box, find out how many cubes are in each of the n columns after Bob switches the gravity. I'm going to do a different one that's not confusing. I mean, the point of the first one is supposed to just literally be a way to warm up the brain. Write a function, BMI, that calculates body mass index. BMI equals weight divided by height squared. If BMI is less than or equal to 18.5, return underweight. Okay, this one is probably far too easy. I'm going to do it really quick, though, because why not? If it's that easy, might as well. I'll probably start with just the if-else and see if I can narrow it down to a simpler solution. Who knows? So if BMI is less than or equal to 18.5, return underweight. So const BMI. First, we got to calculate that. And the BMI, and let me zoom in a little bit. I don't know. Oh, I see. It won't let me really zoom in any more than that. So just let me know in the chat if it's too small. All right, so BMI equals weight divided by height squared. So weight divided by height times height. Now, obviously, we have to take into account the order of operations here. So I can either put these in parentheses like this, or I can, I'm just going to do that. Now, that's the BMI. I'm going to assume it's always going to be a number, and it's not going to try to trick me where I have to parse the number out, because this is an 8Q problem, aka like as easy as it gets, right? So if it's less than, this is the easiest way to do it, right? If it's less than 18.5, or less than or equal, if BMI is less than or equal to 18.5, let me move my keyboard and mouse so I can actually see. This microphone's in the way. Then we want to return what? Underweight? Underweight. Else if, this is too easy. What have I done? I could just copy this, but I don't need the decimal. Then we want to return normal. Else if BMI is less than or equal to 30, return overweight. Otherwise, if it's greater than 30, return obese. So I can just put else, return obese. And, that seems like it would pass, right? Yeah. I probably could have shortened it a bit to some sort of clever solution, but this one was just too easy. I should have picked one that was slightly more difficult. So I'm just going to go into the more difficult one. Yeah, no more warming up. Let's just go into a more difficult one. What do you think? 4, 5Q? Maybe 4Q. Or maybe 5Q. Let's do 5. Common denominators. I'm going to look at a few of them because I might... Some of them, like especially the visual ones, I'm not very good at the visual ones. It's just not my forte. So I'm going to look at a few until I find one that's like in my domain of interest, and then I will pick one and then start solving it, hopefully. Common denominators. You will have a list of rationals in the form of number 1, or numerator 1, comma, denominator 1. I'm going to assume that since I'm using JavaScript, it's going to be an array. Oh, I see. So it'll probably look like this in JavaScript. So a two-dimensional array where each array has 2 items. The first item in each child array will be the numerator, and the second item in each child array would be the denominator. Now it says all the numbers are positive integers. So that's a good thing. You have to produce a result in the form of N1 D and N D. What does it want me to do? You'll have a list of rationals. So what is the goal here? Depending on the language in which D is the smallest as possible, and I'm having a hard time reading this. Depending on the language in which D is as small as possible, and N over 1 divided by D is equal to the numerator divided by the denominator. I mean, I was interested at first, but now I'm like, what is it even asking me? Due to the fact that the first translations were written long ago, more than 6 years, the first translations have only irreducible fractions. Okay, so that's one option. Akin? How do you... B-A-U-N, a sequence beginning with U1 equals 1, U2 equals 1, U3 equals 2, U4 equals 3, U5 equals 3. So it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4. 5, 5, 6, 6, 6, 8, 8, 8, 10, 9. What? How is U8 calculated? U8. We have U7 equals 5, and these coding challenges, man, like, I want to find one that's hard to solve, but the actual question isn't ridiculously overly complex. Just give me a simple problem that's hard to solve. You know what I mean? Get along with Bernoulli's numbers. Is that Italian? Oh, God. Can you get the loop? All right. You are given a node that is the beginning of a linked list. The list always contains a tail and a loop. Your objective is to determine the length of the loop. For example, in the following picture, the tail size is 3 and the loop is a size of 12. So 1, 2. Oh, I see. This is the tail 1, 2, 3, and the loop is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Obviously 12. Try kata level 6. I'm thinking about it, but let me finish reading this one, and then I will make that decision. But use the getNext method or next property to get the following node. Node.getNext. Node.next. What is... So this is the property, this is the method. This method would return the next, or you can just access the property directly, I guess. Do not mutate the nodes. Okay. Thanks to... I broke all the methods from the hash class. These, I guess, are just quotes or comments. Don't miss Dimitri's article in the discussion after you pass the kata. Your objective is to determine the length of the loop. Okay. Well, I'm kind of interested in this one. Let's let's give it a shot. I don't know. I wish it would have given me an example input or something. I don't know. How am I going to determine the difference between the tail and the loop? You are given a node that is the beginning of a linked list. The list always contains a tail and a loop. Your objective is to determine the length of the loop. Okay, well, as you can see in this pattern, if we start at the beginning of the tail, I don't know if we will start at the beginning of the tail. That's the thing. I don't know where we're going to start. It's going to give me a node, and it is the beginning of a linked list. So, okay. So in theory, it's going to put me at the beginning of the tail here. So in this example, node is going to be A. And if you follow it all the way through, you end up in this loop. It loops forever. So I'm going to have to take that into account and say, okay, once we get out of the tail and into the loop, I have to keep track of the loop. That way, once I make it all the way through and I end up back on 1, I can realize that and stop looping, or else I'm just going to loop for infinity and never be able to figure out when it's done. So what I want to do initially is just kind of log the node just to kind of see what sort of input we're looking at. Actually, it should give me some sort of I need some sort of clue as to what these things look like. So yeah, let's just log the node and see what is available to me. Because I have to be able to differentiate between the tail and the loop, right? So there has to be some sort of difference between the two, and I don't see anything that tells me how to determine that, so I have to kind of figure it out on my own, I think. So I'm going to run it. Obviously, it's going to fail. Did it at least... it's not going to output it for me. Did it output it here? That would be kind of funny. Am I missing where example input might be? Oh, it wants me to do test-driven development. What? I don't... This one in particular is just... I want to do this one, but I feel like I'm missing something. There's no way to just output to the console. Or is there? Like, I need to know what this node looks like. What is... Am I wrong about that? I feel like I need to know what this node looks like so that I can determine the difference between the tail and the loop, but I have no way of knowing the difference between the two unless I see what one looks like. Obviously, I know there's a next, but is there a current? You know what I mean? I need to know these things. So console.log doesn't work. Node.next. What if I do this? Right. Output doesn't give me anything, so... Well, this is a huge bummer. I wish there was a way to get some example inputs. I don't know if I can do this one just because of that reason. I guess I'm missing something very important. I don't want to give up on this one because I really want to do this one, but I don't see. Oh, well. Test just runs your test on the bottom right. Yeah, I know that, but like... So I have to run attempt. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay. Hey, thanks, Max. So by running attempt, it actually runs the code. So now I can see that there's get next, set next, next. There doesn't appear to be a current. Oh, you know what? Okay. So it's not good. There's no way to determine which node you're on. So I'm going to have to run through the loop twice. Yeah, attempt worked, Max. Thank you for that. So I see what I'm going to have to do now, right? So it's not, there's no way to determine any value of the node that you're on in the linked list. So if I'm going through this, let's say A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, I never know which one I'm on. The only way that I'm going to be able to determine whether or not I'm in the loop or on the tail is by going through the entirety of the loop at least once, and then oh man, how would I determine that? I was thinking I could go through the loop at least once and keep track, and then say, okay, I've been here before, and if I've been here before, then I know I'm in the loop. But there is no way to say I've been here before because there's no value that shows me. Wow. This is a tricky one. So what I might be able to do is get the next. I could probably get the next node. Wow. Yeah, I don't. This is a tricky one. I like this one. I'm actually going to bookmark this one. I don't know. I don't want to be in my head too much while I'm streaming. That's the problem, is this one I can tell is going to require a lot of thinking. And as to not bore you all, I'm going to take Michael's advice. Optional walrus. Wait, that only has Python. I don't want to do Python. I want to do JavaScript. Last Survivor episode 2. Well, I haven't done episode 1, so let's look at salesman's travel. A traveling salesman has to visit clients. He got each client's address 432. It says, doesn't it start at A and then you just count until you hit null? No, Max, because it's a loop. So if once you get to the 12th one, the next one is 1. And then it goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then, so it's a loop. It's circular. So once you get out of the tail, you end up in this infinite loop. If you just keep going to the next one, you're never going to stop. So there, you have to be able to determine whether or not you're in the loop or the tail. And then you have to count through. No, yeah, get next will always return a value. So that's the problem. Yeah, see, look. Once you enter this loop, every single node has a next. Even the very last one has a next. It points to the first one. So you have to figure out a way to... Two things. One, you have to figure out when you're in the loop. Then you have to start counting. And then the second thing is you have to determine when you're done with the loop. Keep a record of the points, and when you hit the same value, you stop. Well, that's the thing. Each node doesn't really have a value, right? Because I'm logging here, and there's no way to get... Like, the node itself doesn't appear to have a value prop. It just has a... It's just a pointer that goes to another node that has another pointer. So there's no, like, value. Do you get what I'm saying? Does it make sense? So if I'm on number 3, there is no way to determine that you're on number 3 because there is no value of the node. All that it does is it determines what is the next node. See, I'm logging the node here, and these are the only props we got. Get next, set next, and next, but there's no value. Hopefully that makes sense. And that's where I was sitting in my head trying to figure out like how to even approach this problem. And that's why I don't want to sit here for like 10 minutes in my head thinking while I'm streaming. But if you have any ideas, maybe I'll return to it. A traveling salesman has to visit clients. Oh, well, and yeah, I don't want to get too distracted. So here's an address. The basic zip code format usually consists of 2 capital letters followed by a white space and 5 digits. Okay. The list of clients to visit was given as a string of all the addresses, each separated from the others by a comma. So here's the first address. Here's the second address. Here's the third address, and so on. And it's a string, so we would have to parse through that. To ease his travel, he wants to group the list by zip code. Okay, so okay. The function travel will take 2 parameters, r. The function travel will take 2 parameters, r, which is the addresses list of all the clients as a string. So this is r. And zip code. And returns a string of the following format: zip code, street and town, followed by house number. Okay, well, at least this one has examples of output. Thank you. So R is equal, in this particular case, R is this. It's a comma-separated list of addresses. Sure, okay. And then we are going to say that the second argument of that it's going to give us is this, which is, it looks like the state followed by the zip code with a space in between. So in the United States, we have 2 letter abbreviation for every state. And then they're going to also give us the zip code. And what we want to do is to use this as a key in a map or an object. In JavaScript, we're going to use this as a key. And then we are going to put it back into a string and essentially group all of the addresses for this particular one. So if we look back at the input of R, we want anything with Ohio 43071. We can see that this is one. So 123 Main Street needs to be in there, and it is. And if we keep looking, we also want 432 Main Long Road Street. Main Long Road Street, that's kind of funny. And that's in there too. But we do not want 786 High Street, Pollocksville. And the reason we don't want that is because it doesn't have the same zip code and state. So that's making sense. Now, the only part that I'm still trying to figure out is this last part, right? It says, so here we created the list of addresses that meet the zip code requirement. But then at the end, we have this / and this. And I think what this is saying is we're just parsing out the road numbers. Is that right? Yeah, house number. So we are then taking, after we create the list, we're taking the numbers, the road numbers. Why is this so complicated? I'm going to do this one, by the way, guys, but it's such an odd requirement. So we're going to take the street name out of the addresses here, and then we're going to put them at the end in the same order. Okay, I got it. Note for Elixir. So I'm not going to use Elixir, so I don't care about that. You can see a few addresses and zip codes in the test cases. Okay. So here's one that actually makes sense. It's a little weird, and it seems like it might be complicated, which is fine to an extent. But let's do it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this test case here, this sample test. This is an input, right? And it's a giant string. Actually, I'm going to take the easiest case possible, which is this case, the case that was in the example. And I'm going to move this over to VS Code. So I'll set it as a string. We'll say const r, or const example is equal to that. Make sure it's a string. And I'm going to do most of my coding in VS Code just so you all can see it better. And also, the windows are so small here, it's like annoying. So I'm going to take this function boilerplate here, paste it below, and start working through this to see if I can get the desired output. Now, the desired output is listed here, so we want to make sure that the result ends up being this, given this input here. So let's start with this. Const expected result is this. And zip code, const, we'll say test zip. The test zip code that they give is right here. Okay, and I will replace this with test zip. So what we are expecting is to be able to create a function that takes, example, well, let's just say R, and test zip, which, sorry, let me just do this. We want to call this function travel, which I need to write in just a second, with example and test zip. This return should equal the expected result. So I'm going to just simply log whether or not this is equal to the expected result. And if this log's true, then I know that the function that I write here is going to be correct. Now, initially, I'm just going to return an empty string to make sure that if I run this in my console, that it returns false like I would expect. And it does. As you can see, it returns false. So once I write the solution correctly in the function, that should then log true. And that's how I know that I have something that might be working. So that is my process here. I'm going to start trying to figure out how to write this function. The first thing that stands out to me is each address here doesn't have a comma inside of it. So that's good, right? The address itself doesn't have a comma. I'm going to zoom out just ever so slightly. The only commas are here, which separate the addresses. So I can immediately break this into an array. I can say const addresses is equal to r.split, and I can split it by a comma. And now I know that I have an array of all of the addresses. Now, one address would look like this. There we go. So I'm going to put in a comment here that one address would look like this. So this is the string that we're dealing with. Whoa. This is the string that we're dealing with. So I can break this down even further. So each address in this array currently is just a string, and it looks like this. Each address looks like this. But what I want to do is break that down even further into maybe another array or an object where I could say like street number, street name, city, and then zip code and state. But I don't really need to, if you think about it, I don't really need to separate the city name from the street name because in the solution, we always keep those grouped. So I can just break this down into 3 items: the street number, I don't know, we could just call this the content, and then this is the key. So underneath this, I'll say number. Where is the number key? There we go. name, and then key. Just as a way to keep in mind that this is how I'm going to group it. Okay. Now, this is where it gets tricky because I feel like regular expressions might be the way to solve this. Because I don't really necessarily know if I can break this down by space. Like I could say the first space separates the street number from the street name, and therefore I could pull out the street number doing that. However, let me look at some of the inputs. I don't know if that's necessarily a fact. It looks like it's a fact in all of these examples that I see here. And that's cool. I could do that, but then there's the problem of how am I going to determine this? Well, I could say the last space. I could say the last space. Yeah, okay. So I'm just kind of thinking. I know my words aren't coming out the way that I would hope for them to, but I'm thinking through this. So let's grab the street number, const street number. And of course, I'm going to have to do this within a loop while I'm looping through addresses. But for now, you know what? Let's actually just do that. Let's map it. Let's say const. Let's map it. And let's start putting this on separate lines for readability's sake. So I'm going to map each of these strings to an array. We could say A is short for address. Now inside of here, we can get the street number. Const street number is equal to the first space. So we will say a.split. Whoa, not splot. A.split by space 0. Now, hypothetically, that's going to be this. Now, in order to get this piece, I need to do kind of the same thing, but with the length. So let's say const key, as I'm going to call it. We want this chunk here. We can go 2 spaces back, right? So we can split this string by the second to last space because we know that the last space is still part of the key itself, but we want the second to last space. And again, I could be using regular expressions for this, but I don't feel like relearning regular expressions just for a quiz. I mean, a coding challenge. But anyway, this is another way to do it, right? This is look at this and say the second to last space is the split that we want. So let's do that. This is where things are going to get a little wonky. So let's split it. Let's split this whole thing into an array where each item in the array is cut at every single space. Now I have, for this particular string, an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items when I do this. But which item do I want? I want the second to last and the last item. Yeah, that's exactly right. Ryan is correct. That's exactly what I'm doing. Although I was thinking if I just find this one, I could use slice and join. But let's say we do it that way, where we just grab it here and then do slice for the last 2 items. So we could say second to last item through the last item and then join it with a space. So here we have a.split. We have all of these as separate items in an array. We want to get the second to last index. So the second to last index would be the length of it. So a.split. And since I'm using this a.split by an empty space like so many times, I think the best thing to do would be to obviously put it inside of a variable called chunks. So I'm going to take this a.split thing and assign it to a value called chunks and start using this chunks thing instead of writing that a million times. Now, if we want the second to last item, we would say chunks.length minus 2. Because look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is the length. This item is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the array, and 7 minus 2 is 5. So we can say the length minus 2. Now this is the second to last item, but what we really want to do is to say dot slice, or is it slice? Or is it splice? I think it's splice. We'll find out. So what we really wanted to do was splice this array, starting at the second to last item all the way to the end. Now, I don't remember. Is it splice? I feel like array splice. Let's just verify this really quick. Make sure it doesn't mutate. The splice method changes the contents of an array, so it does mutate it. So without modifying it, slice. I was right the first time. Slice is what I want. So if we say slice 2 on this array, 0, 1, 2, we're going to get camel, duck, and elephant. That's exactly what I want. I want slice, not splice. Slice. All right. So this should be the last 2 items, but now I need to join it with a space. Now at this point, what I should probably do, right, is log to ensure that I'm actually, you know, creating the items that I would expect. So let's log the iteration that we're on. No, there's only one. No, there's 3 addresses, so it's fine. There's not that many. So let's just log a string, and let's start. Here, we'll say the street number, and here we'll abbreviate this. Did I say abbreviate? Ignore that. And then we have the key. So I'm just going to log this and see if I get what I was expecting to get. So street number 123 and the key is exactly what I was expecting. So, you know, it just feels really good when you get it right the first try. It doesn't happen that often, so that's pretty awesome. Okay, so far so good. Get rid of the console log. So now I have the key and the street number. What I need to do is now get everything in between it. And I already know the easiest way to do that is to probably say const, and what am I calling this? I'm calling this name. So I'm just gonna assign it to a variable called name. Name is equal to a dot replace, and we can replace this should be a safe way to do it, but let's replace the street number in the string with an empty string, so we're effectively getting rid of it, and then let's also then replace the key as well, so key with an empty string, so we're effectively getting rid of those 2 items from that. Now I want to do the exact same thing and just log, just to make sure that this makes sense, right? So I'm just going to log just the name. Just the name. Yep. That's exactly right so far. But here's the problem. Notice this little extra space here? There's an extra space, and I wonder if yeah. Let me also, so street number plus an empty string. And then we also want to do an empty string plus key. If that doesn't make sense, let me know in the chat. But basically, since there is a space here and a space here, we want to get rid of those 2 spaces. And I could do, what is it? There's a .trim function in JavaScript, right? Maybe we should just do that. That's probably with outer spaces removed. Yeah. So let's do dot trim instead. That is the way to do it. That is the better way to do it. A dot trim. Oops. Whoa. Okay, there we go. An overlay just popped up on my screen. So we'll call dot trim here. Now, just to make sure that that's still working, I'm going to log it one more time. And there's no spaces now, so that's exactly correct. There we go. Okay. So now I have the three pieces. I have the key, the street number, and the name. I'll keep these grouped and this separated here. Now what needs to be done, if we look at the expected output here, is we essentially need to find, I'm going to call basically a filter. Hello, hybrid. I'm going to call a filter on this it's not a, well, actually, since I'm mapping right now, I'm essentially creating a new array from these addresses. So what I should do is now return what I want for this map function, which is to return in order the street number, the name, and the key. Now, let's log what addresses looks like. Console.log addresses. And it should look like exactly what I want it to, hopefully. Yep. A two-dimensional array where each child array has 3 items, the street number, the name, and the key. So now what we can do is filter this array. So we're already on map. I'm basically just chaining a series of functions to the array. Let me just chain a filter to it now, because we only care about the items in this address that have this particular zip code, right? And this particular zip code is passed in as zip. So let's filter out each address. We only care about the addresses where A2, because that's the third item in the array, is equal to zip. Now let's log addresses, and previously we had 3, right? Well, now we should have 2. And that's correct, we have 2. It filtered out the New York address. So far, so good. Okay, what's the next step? The next step is to essentially join all of these in a way that looks like this, where we have the given zip code. So let's say const string thing, I'll rename that later, is going to be the zip code followed by a colon, right? Zip code followed by a colon, and that zip is what's passed into the function. Then we want to return all of the names, but they're going to be comma separated. So let's start there. So all of the names, they will be comma separated. So I can use an IIFE for this. And I'm going to do that now. Yeah. So we can loop through addresses. Well, got to add my little curly brace. Addresses. And we'll probably do reduce. I feel like it might get a little messy. Hopefully it's readable. But we're going to essentially reduce addresses down to... actually, let's not use reduce. Instead, let's just do map. And each item in addresses is a child array with 3 items in it. Right now, for this particular piece of the string, we only care about the second item, which is index 1 in an array. So for each address, let's just return, instead of that array with 3 items in it, let's just return a string of the second item in it, which is index 1. Okay. Dot join, dot join with a comma. Okay, so let's log what string thing looks like so far. See what that looks like. Main Main Street, Louisville, comma, Main Long Road Street, Louisville. So that's exactly what we want. Okay, perfect. Then the final piece of this string is a forward slash followed by all of the street numbers in the same order. So at the end of this chunk here, we're going to add a forward slash. And I'm basically going to copy this exact same like IIFE thing that I made here. But oh, what is? Oh, I'm still in the curly brace. There we go. Outside of the curly brace is where we want the forward slash. So I'm going to do the same thing, but the street numbers, if you remember, are the first item in the array. So that's going to be index 0. So I just replace that, and I don't, and they are also comma separated. So if I save this and run it, that might be the end. That might be the solution. Oh, I might have a typo somewhere. Where's the typo? Oh, I'm not closing my curly brace. Is that, wait, that's not it. That was it. Okay, now let's log it. Okay, it's too long, so it wraps the next line, but that does look exactly like the output I want. So now it's time to see if this flips to true. So let's return string thing, which I'm gonna rename now before I forget. We'll just call it address string. Sure, that works. Copy that and return that. Save, and now hopefully this returns true. It returns true. All right, that's what I like to see. So with that being said, might as well go ahead and get rid of like the extra spaces and stuff, and just copy this back over to Codewars. Now remember, the two arguments are R and zip code in this function. I'm just going to rename them back to that, R and zip code, which means, actually, no, I don't need to do that. That's pointless. Does this look like, wait, let's run the tests. Let's see what happens. All right, the test itself right here passed. Will it pass if I run it officially? Everything passed. That's pretty cool. That's cool. All right, well, that was the solution to the level 6Q problem. I wanted to do this level 5Q problem, but if you go back later and watch the beginning of this video, if you're watching this live, otherwise if you're not, you probably saw it. This one is tricky, and I really want to come back to this one. So what I might end up doing is probably do more coding challenges, live streams in the future, but I want to revisit this one once I figure out how to do it and just kind of talk about how I solved it in the live stream. So keep an eye out for that. And of course, really quickly before I get off, Spartan Boss said hi from Ghana. Hey, how are you doing? Thanks for being here. Just looking at the chat real quick, see. Max Wicked. Max was trying to help me out with this one, but we couldn't quite figure out a good way to approach it, and I didn't want to sit here thinking on the stream in my head for 10 minutes. So that's why I went to a new one. But anyway, that was the problem. Solved it pretty good. Pretty happy with the solution. There's some better ones. Like I said, regular expressions would have probably been the better way to do it, but I didn't want to go through the process of like remembering all the symbols to use in regular expressions just for a coding challenge. So I did it the way that I knew best, and that seemed to work pretty well. So, all right, well, I'll see all of you